We have all had a relative, co-worker, neighbor, or a friend advise us with a knowing smile how religion is all right, I guess, but cannot be true because everyone knows evolution is true, and everyone knows that the age of the universe well predates the Bible's account of creation. No matter that that person talking to us has a knowledge of science that is probably similar or equal to their minuscule knowledge of Judaism. We don't have the expertise in physics, biology, and geology to answer back. Tonight, we have an individual who is knowledgeable in all the above. I have here one page of Dr. Schroeder's resume and what he has done with his life. But it's ridiculous to even go through this. The man is known throughout the world as an eminent physicist, earth scientist, a person who knows how to learn in a scholarly way the Torah, has degrees, including his PhD from MIT, taught at MIT for years, was at the Weizmann Institute, and many other places, including the Atomic Energy Commission. He was at 6 atom bomb detonations, and he's still here. Dr. Schroeder has credentials to address the simple questions of laymen and the seemingly more substantive questions addressed to Judaism by scientists. When we leave tonight, we should all have the confidence that Judaism not only has answers to challenges from science, but through the Torah we gain deep insights into understanding the universe as it was created and as it exists in the present. Dr. Schroeder says a key to this evening is to ask questions, even confrontational questions, and he repeated that many times, even confrontational questions. He guaranteed me he will not be insulted. On the contrary, he welcomes any and all questions. It is very hard not to love Dr. Schroeder. When he answers the phone and you ask him how he is doing, he answers, "Probably better than I deserve." How many of your supervisors at work would give that answer? It is a great honor and pleasure for me to introduce a superior scientist, but even a greater pleasure to introduce an exceptional Jew, Dr. Gerald Schroeder.
Oi. Gosh. From here it's all downhill. I apologize. So the session tonight, of course, is to see whether we can see congruence as opposed to conflict between Torah and Teva. And because the hour is not so early, and rather than giving a long introduction, the key, I would say, in what I have to and I hope there'll be debate, not just the frontal blabbing by myself, that the sources in trying to understand whether there is confluence rather than conflict between Torah and Teva. Teva is the Hebrew word for? Nature, exactly. Torah and Teva, nature. I only use ancient biblical commentaries. I make that clear from the beginning. There is no modern biblical commentaries relative to what the Torah has to say in the physical world, the science world. Okay, is that too low?
Yeah, too low.
By using ancient commentaries, so there's no attempt to bend the Bible to match the science. I mean, no one can be completely objective. Subjectivity always sleeps in. So by using ancient commentaries, at least we see that we're not when the Ramban 800 years ago, or Maimonides almost 900 years ago, Rashi almost 1,000 years ago, and talk about certain aspects of the subtleties within the text. They're not trying to match modern science. They see those subtleties in the text. King Solomon wrote in Proverbs number 25, verse 11, A word well spoken is like apples of gold in a dish of silver. And Maimonides, the Rambam, Maimonides in the Guide for the Perplexed, actually I think Maimonides based the entire Guide for the Perplexed on that proverb. Maimonides in the Guide for the Perplexed, the year 1190, said, what was King Solomon discussing? A word well spoken is like apples of gold in a dish of silver. It's Proverbs 25:11. He said, when you look at a dish from a distance, that's all you see, the beautiful silver dish. You can see its craftsmanship, you can see its beauty. What you can't see is what's inside the dish, the apples of gold. Only when they bring the dish close in do you see the apples of gold. The silver dish, the literal text of the Bible. The apples of gold, the deeper meanings. The apples of gold are really what's called Kabbalah, the spiritual physics of the world. Kabbalah is not mysticism. Kabbalah is how God runs the world. I studied material physics at MIT, and there's another kind of physics called spiritual physics, also called Kabbalah. And those are the apples of gold. The silver dish, the frontal teaching, do this, don't do that, eat that, don't do that. And the apples of gold tell you why certain things happen in the world that seem maybe should happen, or how did they happen, etc. So with that background, ancient commentary, modern science, to try to jump into some of the aspects of the world that might be intriguing. I hope we'll get to something along the age of the universe and a bit on evolution. But just even before this, and I never started a talk like this in the past, but I'd like to. If you look at the diagram that was passed around, it's much more effective when you go right to the web because it's in color, and this is directly off the NASA. This is courtesy of NASA because this is exactly. There's no Torah-Lite, there's no Schroeder, there's no Bible in this picture. This is 100% the distilled knowledge of the scientific community of how the universe was put together, and it's quite an extraordinary statement. And I say above that I think it probably has the two most phenomenal theological statements that science will ever be able to make about the world. It's total theology. The black is nothing. The black is not a vacuum. The black around the diagram, okay? The black around the diagram is something of which humans cannot conceive. Humans can't think of nothing. You can't abstract space from your thoughts. You can't extract time from your thoughts. We all think in the same box. Time, space, matter. You can be as clever as you want, as educated as you want, as philosophical. You can spend 10 years on the mountaintop somewhere, contemplating your navel, and you still will think every thought you have in the same box. We can't abstract time and space from our thoughts. And so the black around this diagram isn't a vacuum, it's nothing in the fullest sense of the word. Torah would say it's God. In other words, God, one of the names for God is Hamakom, right? The place in which the universe dwells. But from a science point of view, it's absolutely nothing. And then this diagram, which is straight off the web, you only have to type in NASA, get to the web, and then type in WMAP, those initials, and you search and you find this diagram in color. And the statements that it make, I think, are so extraordinary that I'd rather start off like this and then get into other things that are much more mundane, like how old is the universe and what about dinosaurs. The statement's extraordinary. First of all, the Ramban Nachmanides, the Mikubal, with no equivocation, tells us there is one physical creation. He says in his commentary on Genesis, he says it 3 times over. There's one physical creation. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'ha'aretz. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. God created the heavens and the earth. All of the creations are spiritual. So in verse 21 of Genesis chapter 1, which says God creates the animals, that's not their bodies. Or maybe the Kabbalah is wrong, but we have to either accept some of these statements or not. So it would be a spiritual creation. I suggest it refers to the nefesh, soul of animal life. And in verse 27 of chapter 1, it says God creates the Adam, et ha'adam. And for that nuance, I'm beholden to Peggy Ketz of Hawaii. God doesn't create Adam. God creates the Adam. The English misses it totally. And that creation is the neshama, the soul of human life. The nefesh and the neshama have arguments. We can get to that later, but I just want to stick with the fact that there's one physical creation, and everything was made for this. Now, this diagram is a time diagram. The universe expands in all directions, but this is expansion over time. So we have a creation, and these lines, the vertical lines, are billions of years. If you wanted to see our part of the world, you go to the very last line where the satellite WMAP is, and you'd expand that in 3 dimensions. Remember, the expansion is in 3 dimensions, but this is a 2-dimensional plot, so the horizontal The left and right axis is time over time. So what we have here is a statement pretty amazing. There's one physical creation. It's a burst of energy. Energy comes in lots of forms. People talk about string theory, that theory, the other theory. Don't worry about strings or whatever. Just it's a burst of energy. Very, very, very rapidly downstream from the creation, the energy is primarily electromagnetic radiation by a fraction of, by a microsecond. The energy is essentially as light, super powerful light beams, as is defined here. And eventually, over time, look what happens. Look what the scientific community accepts. Light beams became alive. That's a given. That's what that's one of the two major theological statements that this diagram says. Science holds by the fact that light beams can metamorphose and become beings that have emotions like love. I mean, where does a light beam have the chutzpah to feel love? But that's what this diagram says. Boredom, excitement, because this is that left-hand side is where it says the quantum fluctuation is the only physical creation. And from that came beings that could make this satellite. It's a phenomenal statement. When people are hung up on evolution, of how a fish became a frog, it's not even interesting compared to the fact that light beams became frogs and became people and everything else, because that's what the scientific community holds. Now that's a stretch, whether it's 14 billion years or 6 days or microseconds. It was the one sentence a few years ago I had in the New York Times. It doesn't matter if it's 6 days, a microsecond, or a billion years, or 14 billion years. The phenomena is what's phenomenal. The phenomena is phenomenal. Light beams became alive. I could say that over and not say anything else. That's being internalized. And it never stopped being energy. The mistake of thinking E equals mc squared, the famous equation, doesn't say that energy disappears and becomes matter. That's exactly what it does not say. It says that matter, put the stuff on the other side, that energy can change form and take on the form of matter, but it always remains energy. Always. When those bombs, the first bomb was a uranium bomb. When that uranium bomb used up however many grams of uranium it used up to blow up the mountain I was standing on by mistake, it was an error. We underestimated the yield, and the top of the mountain blew off. It was pretty. At that age you think everything is fun, but you look back, it was crazy. The top of the mountain, and there's only 5 of us on the top of the mountain. 3 radiation safety people, me, and my technician. And suddenly the whole mountain is blowing up and we have to race out of there. But it's exciting. And it was exciting. It's essentially, it just is a total aside, but it's interesting about high tech. So I want to go and make my measurements. We're on the top of the mountain. It's a mesa. It's in Nevada. And the bomb goes off, the mountain like this, but so what? I have to go and make my measurements. So the radiation people said, you can't go until we test the area. It's like there's not going to be any radiation. So they go forward with their Geiger counters, and they come back 5 minutes later clicking, click, 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 because they'd walked into a radioactive cloud, and now their Geiger counters were kaput because they're full of radiation. So we had to test which way was this burst of energy radiation moving towards us or away from us. It took them 5 minutes to get back. So using high tech, we only had one Geiger counter left, and we had to keep it clean. The level of high tech, we took a lunch bag out of the glove compartment, put the lunch bag over the Geiger counter, and they came back in 3 minutes. Now the lunch bag was radioactive, but you could still use it, could throw that away. You had a clean Geiger counter, but the fact that came back in 3 minutes meant the cloud was coming towards us, which means we had to go that way, but there was no road that way. But that was the exciting part. In any event, totalist, I don't know what brought that in, but here we have light beams becoming alive. The parallel of that equals mc squared. It doesn't mean, see, we get confused sometimes. We think that the energy disappears. That uranium was always energy. It was just in the form of metal, uranium-235 metal. And it returned to its primordial form. The only parallel that I can see, which I think is an absolutely powerful parallel for me, is that when you drink a glass of water, what are you drinking besides the dirt? I mean, what are you drinking? You're drinking hydrogen and oxygen. Now, I don't think there's a person in that room that said the last time on a real hot day, like today's suddenly hot, on a hot day in New York, babes, you can't beat hydrogen and oxygen. Glug, 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 glug. Because we think we're drinking water, which we are. But when you drink water, you're drinking hydrogen and oxygen in a special form. Water never stops being hydrogen and oxygen. It just changes form. And when you look in the mirror in the morning, as depressing as it might be, the simple fact is you are looking at the energy of creation. It's not poetry. We are the energy of creation, as is the chair you're sitting on as well. It never stops being energy. It can just change form. That's what equals MC squares tells us about. Not that the energy disappears and becomes matter. No, it just changes form. The oxygen and the hydrogen remain oxygen and hydrogen. They just change form and become water. And we are literally the energy of creation. It's not that we witnessed the creation of the universe. We were part of it. We entered this universe as light beams. Over time, the light beams changed form. Einstein taught how that could happen, and Fred Hoyle and a few others, that the light beams can change form and become elements. 5 billion years ago, you and I and everything you see around you were stardust, the remnants of an exploding star. It's not poetry. We came from stardust. But that's already 10 billion years downstream from the creation. And then this stardust coalesced, etc. Many things happened, and we formed a sun and a planet. And 4 billion years ago, you and I were rocks and water and a few simple molecules on the earth. Not our souls, our bodies. And then finally they became alive, which no one has a clue how that happened, etc., and becomes finally people sleeping through lectures, which is amazing what light beams can do. But that's what they did, and that's what NASA and the scientific community tells us. Energy became alive. So the first amazing theological statement is that we were part of the creation, and we've been in it for billions of years, and somehow those light beams were clever enough to build satellites that WMAP satellite on the right-hand side. So how did they get that? Well, I look at the diagram and say, well, what created the universe? And I see it right here. It's a big word. It doesn't say G-O-D. It says quantum fluctuations. Quantum fluctuations created the universe. That's pretty amazing. See, we always learned that nothing comes from nothing. It's that lovely song, The Sound of Music. Anyone remember there's a wonderful musical written by a couple of Jews called Nothing, and one of the songs is "Nothing comes from nothing and nothing ever will." Right? And if you're familiar with that at all. But if you're not, they're talking about love and being married for over 35 years. I can tell you, love does not come from nothing. It comes from work, a lot of hard work, okay? But, say it again, what?
Something good is in it.
What?
Something good. Something good.
What's my... Oh, something good, yeah? Okay, so... Okay, in any event. So, but see, although love doesn't come from nothing, the physical world can. Quantum fluctuation, science tells us what created the universe is quantum fluctuation. And the quote from Ed Tryron, just below the picture, tells you the whole story. It's worth looking up his original paper in Nature. Notice it was published in Nature, which is one of the 2 leading peer-reviewed journals in the world. So what does it mean a quantum fluctuation created the universe? Well, that pretty much tells us how light beams can become alive. Because a quantum fluctuation allows something from nothing, from absolute nothing, provided you've got a quantum physics predating the universe. Our understanding of time starts with the beginning of the universe. So that means quantum physics predates our understanding of time, which means that the laws of nature predate the universe, which means the laws of nature predate time, because that's what this diagram says. Time starts within the universe as far as we understand time. So we have something that's not physical. The laws of nature aren't nature. They're the laws of nature. They're information. They're wisdom, however you want to say it. So we have something that's not physical, that predates time, is outside of time, and can create a universe. Now that should sound very familiar. Not physical, outside of time, able to create a universe from absolute nothing. Gosh, what does that sound like? No? Yeah, it happens to be the biblical definition of God. And atheists will tell you, as they've told me, if you want to call that God, call it God. But is it a God to which you can talk, to which you can pray? That's the question. Is that what's going on? But you don't need, from this diagram, it's very clear. As far as this goes, you don't need a God to make the universe. Physics will do it just right, provided the laws of nature predate the universe, which is a bit of a stretch, but that's what the scientific community holds by. So then how would you possibly know if it's just the laws of nature, or maybe it's God using the laws of nature? So from that aspect, there are two things that would talk about it. And as a very late dear friend of mine and of my wife's, the husband of a very close friend of hers, just died of cancer last week. Bob Lieberlis, who's a historian, he said there are two ways of proving there's a God in the world. One is science, one is history. He was an internationally known lecturer on the history of the Jews, especially in the Middle Ages, and he died of cancer last week. But he said there are two ways of knowing God in this world, science and history. And that's interesting. I don't know if he realized it, but that's exactly what Moses says as well. Moses in, I can remember the verse, but I'm not sure the chapter. I think it's Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7, if I remember correctly. Moses says the following: if you want to figure out if there's a God acting in this world, those words I'm putting in because you have to read the whole paragraph for, Zechor yemot olam, binot shenot dor v'dor. Remember the days of old, or look at the flow of social history. Moses breaks the calendar and the proof of God into two parts. Remember the days of old, Zechor yemot olam, remember the days of old, the 6 days of Genesis. The Ramban says, Nachmani says, Hashesh Yemei Breshit, the 6 days of Genesis. The flow from a burst of energy to sentient life. Okay? But if that doesn't do it for you, and it doesn't to many people, then Bino Chinot Dor V'Dor, then look at the flow of social history. And that was Bob's work also, but it's something I would say also, that look at the flow of social history. And you don't have to go back to Sinai. Just go back the last 50, 100 years. Does the flow of social history make sense? Moses says there are two clues to God active in this world. In other words, the laws of nature predate the universe. They have the exact description of the God of the Bible up to a point of getting the universe going. Then is God still active in the universe or not? And that's the point where Moses comes to say, you can't see the creation, but you can look at the flow of social. Remember the days of old. Does it make sense that a burst of energy could become alive? But if that doesn't impress you, then look at flow of social history. And what would be social history? It would be the development of society. Does it make sense, for example, that at least as I've read, I don't know if it's true, that the city most mentioned on the newspapers of the world after Washington, D.C., which is number one, is, guess which city? Jerusalem. Well, it's big. I say always, thank God for the Mediterranean, or there'd be a tremendous political problem, because you can't write, this country's so small, you can't write the names of the city, they have to extend it to the ocean. No, if you didn't have it, you have the numbers going to Jordan, they say we're annexing Jordan. You know, I mean, it's a tremendous problem, so thank God for the Mediterranean. This tiny country, or that we appear everywhere. I mean, example after example. It's not like we're better or worse. Everyone knows Madoff was a Jew, a lousy Jew. He rules hundreds of thousands of people's lives, and the whole world knows he's a Jew. So the Talmud never says Jews are better or worse. Sanhedrin says we can be the worst people in the world, and Madoff more or less proved that. But it does say that we will always stand out. That's one thing it does say. Jews will always stand out. They will always be different. We can be great and we can be lousy. We've got a lot of great ones. I mean, our great ones outnumber the lousy ones, but the lousy ones really stand out because that's only the only world remembers the lousy ones. They don't remember the vaccines for polio, etc., etc. The software for cell phones. I don't know if it's better or worse, but it is from Israel. In other words, we are markers in the world. If you run an experiment, and you want to prove something, and let's say you invent aspirin. 100 people have headaches. Give 100 people aspirins. The next day, not one of them has a headache. What have you proven? Exactly. You have to have a control group. But if you give 50 people aspirins, and 50 that have headaches, and 50 blanks that have headaches, and next day the blanks have headaches, the aspirins people don't have, you've proven aspirins work. You have to have a control group, and God makes it very clear. In fact, in Deuteronomy, at the end, God says point blank, you're such cruds, I would have wiped you out. It's the closing chapter of Genesis. No, it's chapter 32. I would have wiped you out. But I couldn't do it because the nations of the world would say that they did it and it wasn't my hand. And when we've got God in the corner here, you realize he has to preserve the Jewish people because that's his guarantee to prove that there's a God active in this world. So when we say whether the laws of nature are active in this world or not, I say that would be the proof. So we have something beforehand, those two aspects, the physics that change light beams into life, and then the history. That would tell us that the quantum fluctuation, the laws of nature, etc., that description of God, not physical, eternal, can create the universe, information, in other words, we can see that God then is, or I say see, but I would say you can see that God is active in the world. So the question is, where do those laws of nature come? And that's the opening word of Genesis, and it is just absolutely annoying that we have forced down our throats, and then we'll get to the other stuff like the age of the universe, the simple stuff, That's the easy stuff. That we have had forced down our throats the opening sentence of the Bible, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, or with the beginning of God's creating the heavens and earth, or from a beginning, all these ridiculous translations, which Rashi says are wrong. Rashi makes it point blank. It's the second Rashi in the Torah. He said if the Torah wanted to say in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, it wouldn't be Bereshit bara Elokim, it would be Bereshona bara. Rashi points back. He shows the Hebrew is different. We always say, well, he meant it could be that way. That's not what he's saying. He's saying those translations are wrong, because he's writing that, I'm, in my opinion, certain, in a response, first from the Jerusalem translation, which predates him by 900 years, the Targum Yushan, not the Talmud, the Targum Yushan, which is written in response to the Septuagint. It is the Greek view of the world that Genesis chapter 1 says, in the beginning God created the heavens and earth. And the people that put our art scroll know it's wrong because they can read the Rashi. Most people don't bother reading the small Rashi that's in the art scroll. But the Rashi they bring down says their translation is wrong. It is not in the beginning, from a beginning, or by a beginning. I learned it first from the Ramban. And since we just had Torah, and you know you have to report something in someone's name, you learned it. So the Ramban Nachmanides didn't invent it, but this is what he writes. And I learned it from there because I'd always sloughed over this before. And then I found it from Rashi and etc. And it says, did I mark it here? If you will merit and understand the secret of the first word, Bereshit, you will know why the Jerusalem translation is 1900 years, it's about 200 or 300 years after the Greek translation, which forced down our throat in the beginning, because Bereshit does not mean in the beginning. At the minimum, it means the beginning of. Anyone knows Hebrew grammar knows that exactly. But the of has no object. So in the art scroll, and I knock it hard because they keep cloning these. You see in science books also, this cloning like evolution is proven. Baloney, it's not proven, it's a theory. And the same is with this, it's cloning. The text doesn't say in the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth, which is the art scroll, because the word creating is nowhere in the text, as Rashi points out. The word is created, Beit Resh Aleph, not creating. Creating is spelled differently. So where do they have the chutzpah to say? Because Bereshit, in the simplest meaning, is in the beginning of. Now the Greeks just dropped the of, or it was actually 70 Jews that did the Septuagint, but they wanted to make it Greek friendly. So the Septuagint, the Greek translation, if you want to see it yourself, just go to the web, type in Septuagint, Greek English, Greek French, whatever your native language is, and you'll get it in those languages. And it will say, in the beginning God created the heavens, in the beginning God made the heavens and earth, actually the Greek is. But what kind of means the beginning? Bereshit means the beginning of. Well, we just dropped the of because it's only the Bible, or does that matter? It's only the opening sense of the Bible. But if we stuck with it, that's what the Rashi said, and that explains the left-hand side of this diagram. If you will merit and understand the secret of the first word, Bereshit, you will know why the Jerusalem translation of Genesis is, with wisdom God created the heavens and the earth. With wisdom, God created Bereshit. This may not be what you thought you were going to hear tonight, but I'll tell you what's so crucial about this is that science has come to confirm this. Bereshit, with a first cause of wisdom. Why wisdom? Now Rashi gets us to this. When you read the Rashi, it says if you want to understand the meaning of the word, it's one of the few sources that places where Rashi brings his sources. Go to Proverb number 8, verse 22 or 23, says on 22, 23. And he says, I am wisdom. God made me as the beginning of his ways before there was an earth. It's Proverbs. But Rashi assumes by the time you get to verse 23 or 22, you've read the first 21 verses. And in the first 21 verses, in verse 12, it says, I am wisdom. Ani chachma. Not I am wise, not ani chacham. Ani chachma. I am wisdom. Wisdom is speaking here. Proverb number 8 is a first-person proverb, and wisdom is the first person, the I and the me. God made me, wisdom is the beginning of God's ways. Before there was an earth, I, wisdom, was present. Wisdom was the first creation, and who makes it? Yud Kei Vav Kei. So if this diagram that you have here would be complete, you'd have further just off like in the black or wherever you couldn't see, you'd have Yud Kei Vav Kei, and then after, God, the four-letter name of God, the Gematria is 26, and then you would have the first emanation would be wisdom, which is the laws of nature, right? Wisdom, information, and then you'd have that creating the universe. Now, the fact is that science holds by that today, that the universe is the expression of information. That the entire universe is, it's hard to believe it because it feels so solid. But it's not. Even at the physical level, we know it's not solid. If you could scale up an atom to the size that's in the center, called the nucleus, to like the size like an orange or a grapefruit, like that big, and then you have the electrons around the outside, and he guesses if the center were this big, where would the electrons be? I mean, just to show how even the solidity isn't solid, but we feel it because of these virtual forces. So any guesses, this is the center of the nucleus. Now, where's the electron cloud? Here, here, here. And he guesses 4 miles away in each direction. And everything in between is empty, but it feels solid. But it's not. It's all these virtual photons producing forces that make it feel solid. Even the solid world is ethereal. And then we suddenly discover even the solid world evaporates into wavelets of energy. And then we discover that it's not so bizarre then. That in fact, the whole world is actually the expression of information. That a quantum fluctuation from absolute nothing can produce energy. In other words, information can actually produce a physical world. That the matrix of the world isn't the physical world. It's totally spiritual. And those would be the two aspects of this diagram that would allow us to understand how light beams become alive. Because light beams are the manifestation of divine wisdom. The diagram should say God over here, the 4-letter name of God, and then out of that comes wisdom, the laws of nature, information, however you want to say it. Physics calls it information today. And the information condenses somehow and becomes alive. It's no less bizarre to think that information can produce a physical world than it is to think that light beams can produce life. I mean, it's so, it's such a stretch. So suddenly, what physics, quantum physics holds by this, put it that way. And that's why it says quantum fluctuation. So those are the two aspects of that diagram that I think are just so fundamental, so extraordinary that science is willing to embrace them. And that's why when you get to evolution, it's like a fish becoming a frog. Big deal. The amazing thing is light beams became fishes and frogs, and that's really extraordinary. So, yes, there's a hand up, yes.
How does that work with Jewish thought that God is constantly putting his energy, theoretically, into the world being constantly being created? So how does that work with it having a beginning and having it that the world constantly being created?
Well, there was a beginning. It doesn't mean that the universe is state. It doesn't mean the universe is eternal. It means that there was a beginning to the universe. I would assume that if the world is the expression of information, if God retracted God's self, which would be pulling the information where the world would eventually would evaporate. I would presume it's totally the expression of this divine information.
So God is constantly plugged in.
Well, there's the idea of particles popping in and out of existence. How the midrash really means literally. Midrashim are very, let's say, gamish, flexible. Sometimes they're literal, and sometimes they're just expressions of an emotional phenomenon. So, but I would say that for certain the information, the wisdom, the matrix of the world is this divine information. I don't know if I have George Wald in this. No. Well, Heisenberg talks about it also. The inherent difficulties in materials theory appear clearly in 20th century physics. The difficulty relates to whether the smallest units of matter are actually physical objects. Or are they actual physical objects? Do they exist like stones and flowers? The smallest units of matter are in fact not physical objects. They are ideas. And that's Werner Heisenberg. He also said something very beautiful. It's called the bottom of the cup. He said I don't know if I have it in here, do I have it here? Let's see, did I put that in? That the first drink, this first sip from the cup of the natural sciences makes one an atheist. When you get to the bottom of the cup, God is waiting. That's Werner Heisenberg. When you get to in other words, God is in the details, because it is. The first view looks like it's very, very gashmi, it's very material, and suddenly even the material world evaporates. That's not contemplating our navel on top of some mountain, some or New Age, whatever it is. It's physics. It's the physics of the world. The idea that you can't mention spirituality in the physics classroom is a farce. I mean, that's what the whole world is made of now. Metaphysical, by metaphysical I mean the non-physical. So, one other just point I'm just going to drop here, and then talk about perhaps something simpler like how could it be the universe is young and old. And first would be, persons sometimes say, well, if in fact like information can create the world and etc., so why didn't God tell us this? why do we have this six, Genesis chapter 1, you've probably all read it. It's broken into 6 days. Something happens, there's evening and morning. It's the poor translation, but we let it go evening, morning, day, etc. So why didn't God give us the whole story? Why? So now we make these calculations. It's billions of years, and sometimes it's days. So the late friend Arnie Novak from, so many people dying here, but Arnie Novak died about a year ago, also of cancer, and he'd introduced several of my talks in Providence, Rhode Island. This is from a year and a half ago. And he wrote like this, which is trying to understand, because Genesis Revisited, I'm going to paraphrase it a bit. This is what the text would have sounded like if God had decided to tell us the whole story of what's going on, because people always complain, well, if it's really billions of years, why didn't God say billions of years? Why days? Why couldn't God get the whole story? So it would sound something like this, slightly more complicated, but this generally. God created the heavens and the earth was astonishing empty, darkness than the surface of the deep, and divine presence hovered over the surface of the waters, and God said, let there be light. Okay? And there was a high-energy plasma that burst forth from nothingness, a quantum event, in fact, a quantum fluctuation, which can create something from nothing. And God said the light was good, but the light was trapped within the darkness of a plasma field. And because the plasma field, light cannot travel coherently, then God had to separate the light from the darkness as the plasma cooled, and the light was able to escape from this high-energy bundle. But as the plasma cooled further, matter and antimatter were formed because energy can condense into the form of matter. The difficulty is when matter and energy coalesce, they always form in exactly the same amounts, and therefore they annihilate one another. They go back to energy at a small amount, about 1 part in a million, manage to survive. We had a bit more matter than antimatter, so that allows for the physical world, which you're about to see as the days go by. These masses interacted and annihilated each other, just a small survived, and just enough to make the 92 elements that fill the world. And God called the day light and the darkness night. And there was evening and morning, one cosmic day. But since you see there was no sun or moon yet, how could we measure a day? Well, that's done by the cosmic day being counted by counting the oscillations of the background radiation that crested at each of the energy peaks. And Moses translated this information to the peoples, and the people said, what are you talking about? Thank you, Arnie. The point of the story is that God couldn't have explained the creation to the Jewish people at the time of the giving of the Torah because they didn't have the vocabulary or the capacity to understand it. Most of us sitting here today can't even understand it, nor can I, but it didn't happen. On the other hand, God could simply have said, God created the earth and all it contained in 6 days and rested on the 7th. God chose neither. Rather, God revealed the creation, the billions of years and the entire cosmic flow in a hidden manner and left it as a challenge for future generations to unravel the puzzle. We are fortunate to be among the first of the generations with the tools and the vocabulary to understand this. See, there was no way of understanding it otherwise. So the argument, why didn't God say it? Well, I just said it. And probably, I didn't even understand it, and I'm supposed to have some background, and I'm reading it. But I guess almost no one understood it either here. But that would be the story of what it would be to tell the whole story. So, just one other point, and then we can go to something simple. So there are some miracles. I would never claim that every miracle or every event in the Torah can be explained scientifically. I would absolutely be folly to say so. There are things which there are no logical explanations. But one of them that sometimes comes up so one of the questions that's often asked in the sessions that I give in Jerusalem as miracles is how did the Israelites get across the sea when God leads them out? And if you realize what happens, they're coming out of Egypt after the 10 plagues, and then they're going up along the coast of the Mediterranean, and God says, the Philistines are there, there's going to be a battle, the Jews aren't ready, he wasn't ready, turn them around. God couldn't look over the sand dunes to figure that out beforehand, but it was deliberate to confuse the Pharaoh. So God banks them they are camped on the banks of the Yam Suf, the Sea of Yam Suf. Yam means sea, Suf means reed, okay? The sea is here, the Egyptians are closing in, the people are screaming bloody murder to God, save us. They're really angry with Moses, they do petitionary prayer, save us. And God decides to save them, and you know what opens the sea? Not Midrash, the text, a wind. But not just a wind, it's Exodus chapter 14, verse 21. A strong east wind blows all night. We're told explicitly that God made a strong east wind blow all night. Why all that information? Why not just the wind? Why a strong wind, an east wind, a wind that blows all night? I needed that information to let me understand what happens next. The sea opens, the Israelites go through. Who follows them right on in? The Egyptians. It's just a wind, a natural wind. Winds happen in this part of the world. Okay, it's amazing that it just happened to be the right wind at the right time, but winds do happen. We know they thought it looked natural. How do we know that? Because as they're in the middle of the sea and the waters are coming back, at that point they realize it's supernatural. They say, Ya Habibi, God is fighting for the Israelites. Let's get out of here. So they knew, they realized there's a change in perception from being just natural to divine. So could a wind split the sea? Or is it just like, another thing the Bible forces down our throats until we figure it out? Well, two scientists, one by the name of Nof and the other by the name of Palder, who when I met them were not walking around with this kind of stuff on their head, which is a minhag in any event. And they decided to see whether the wind could split the Yam Suf. They had to make a decision where it was. I don't know if they knew exactly. No one really knows exactly. There is one reference, and only one reference in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible. It's a nice Devar Torah, word of Torah for the Pesach Seder. If you remember the number 1926, what number did I just say? 1926. Interesting how quickly your brain was able to record that. Something happened in your brain in that half of a second that made you record it. What was the number? Yeah, sooner it'll become permanent memory. I just changed your brain. That's mind over matter. It's amazing though you think about it. We just take for granted, but what's happening in your brain? I mean, frankly, no one knows what, even neurologists, we've gone over this with many neurologists I spoke. You don't know what, we know there's firing of synapses and more nerves, more nerves are firing. That's all we see it's happening, but how you remember, what was the number?
1926.
Yeah, and the reference is the one is the first book of Kings, chapter 9, verse 26. Is the only place in the entire Tanakh where the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, is definitively identified. So if you want a nice word of Torah for your Passover Seder, there it is. 1926, first book of Kings, chapter 9, verse 26. And there it says, King Solomon built a fleet of ships by Etzion Gever near Eilat on the banks of the Yam Suf. That's the text. King Solomon built a fleet of ships by Etzion Gever next to Eilat on the banks of the Yam Suf. So what's the body? What's the water body? What's the water body that touches Eilat? Well, what water body is that? Well, yeah. That's the Gulf of Aqaba. It leads into, it's the Red Sea. Yeah, which means where were they passing to? Where's Sinai? Where is it? Where isn't Mount Sinai? In the Sinai Peninsula. So where is Sinai? It's either in Jordan or Saudi Arabia. The data are pretty much in Saudi Arabia, but that's pretty much the observation at the moment, because they crossed over the Yam Suf. They crossed from east to west, and when they get to the other side, they're either in Jordan or Saudi Arabia. So there are data coming up that might be, but in any event, could a wind split the sea? So Nof and Paldur decided to check it out. Now, I don't know where they did the actual measurement. They didn't take I know one thing where they didn't do. They didn't take a big fan down to the Yam Suf and make a big blow. But instead what they did is they plotted this into their computer. They plotted, there were meteorologists that worked with computers, and they plotted into the computer the topography, the hills, the valleys, etc., and they turned on a strong east wind that blew all night, 40 miles an hour out of the east for 8 hours, and the sea split. They turned off the wind, and the water came back like a tidal, exactly the description that's in the Bible. The only reason that that's interesting is not because you're hearing some Bible thumper like me telling you it, is that they published it in the world's leading peer-reviewed journal of meteorology. The American Bulletin, the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society is the highest peer-reviewed journal in meteorology. It passed peer review. Are there oceanographic explanations for the Israelites crossing the Red Sea? I don't think you could get that passed today, because they would say it's a mixing of science and the Bible. But this is a few years ago, and the answer is yes. Are there oceanographic explanations for the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, North and Paldor? Yeah, there are. It's split, and it passed peer review. I only bring this down because it's an example of sometimes when you hear people saying something, well, how could it happen? Oh, yeah, he said it, a big deal. Always check out. As the late Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Noah Weinberg of blessed memory, said, always question, because that strengthens your understanding. don't close your mind off and say it could happen or it couldn't happen. Always question. And you see, usually it works very well. It depends what your questions are. So much for that. Let's see what the easier types of questions might be. One might be, how old is the universe? That could be a question. Maybe evolution could be a problem, but it's perhaps interesting to talk about evolution. Yeah, I mean, I talk about the age of the universe. That's easier. Okay. Yeah. Age of the universe. Okay. And a vote of one. It's unanimous. One person. Only one person vote. Yeah.
Who was God referring to when he said, "Let us make man"? Usually, the answer is the angels, but the angels aren't the mind.
Yeah. Well, and that's the midrashim. I would stick to the text about who and see where the hint would be. In the second chapter of Genesis, maybe you've all learned this already. The second chapter of Genesis, in verse number 7, chapter 2 of Genesis is not chronological. In chapter 2, God says, I don't have it in front of me. God forms the Adam dust from the ground. Okay, that's chapter 2. It's not a different Adam. The Torah very often says the same thing from two different viewpoints to let you teach stuff, that you learn stuff out of the text. So chapter 2 is a retelling of chapter 1 with different details. Okay, it's not a different Adam. It's different information. So in verse number 7, it says God formed the Adam dust, and it goes on from that. And that verb formed is spelled with the following Hebrew letters. Vav, these are the names of the letters. Vav, Yud, Yud, Sadi, Resh. It's a drush that every kindergartner or first grader in Israel learns. You probably all learn it here also. Formed, Vav, Yud, Yud, Sadi, Resh. A few verses later, in verse number 19, we're talking about the animals being formed. The structure of the sentence is identical in the Hebrew. You wouldn't guess it from the English. It's identical. And the Lord God formed the animals, etc. Formed, Vav, Yud, Sadi, Resh. Hear the difference? Humans, Vav, Yud, Yud, Sadi, Resh. Animals, Vav, Yud, Sadi, Resh. They're spelled differently, but the grammar is identical. The word structure is identical. So why are there two Yuds when God forms the Adam, and one Yud when God forms the animals? So there's many ways of understanding, but that would be the Naaseh, I would say. That the two Yuds are God using the physical world and the spiritual world, however you want to see it, that there's more than one thing. God is working with something other than just God slapping it, just, bingo, making it happen. Hence, two Yuds for human. It could be the Nefesh and the Neshama. All animals have a Nefesh, including the human animal, but only humans have a Nefesh and a Neshama. The Nefesh says, throw your garbage in the street, cut in line, cheat in the supermarket. And then the Neshama says, don't do that. Other people have to walk here. You wouldn't throw the garbage down on your living room floor. Why do you throw it down in the street? Right, the street's like a piece of garbage dump. Or if you steal the supermarket, you're stealing from your friends because someone's got to pay for the food. The Nefesh says, I don't care. What do I care? Let the garbage man, let the person next week can pick up my garbage. I don't care. And then the Neshama says, act like a human being already. The Nefesh doesn't know you're a human. The Nefesh knows, it's like a super narcissist would be a Nefesh person. Only thinks of himself or herself, the nuclear family. Animals are like that. Animals don't mind throwing the garbage in the street. Humans should mind throwing the garbage in the street. So, or cheating in the market. So that could be the double yud there. In other words, that naaseh is learned out from the double yud for let us, man, God formed the Adam, vav yud yud sadi resh, as opposed to the animals, vav yud sadi resh, one yud versus two yud. So that I understand as the nas, that God is working with the physical world at that point and uses the world together to make Adam. Yes? On what?
On the information that creates the world.
Oh, the wisdom? Oh, you mean the beginning, that diagram? Which?
That's the first half of your talk.
Oh.
Talk about that a little more. That's, part of the concept.
Yeah, only that physics today, well, that's why I quoted Heisenberg as a source, a Nobel laureate, that this we see that the physical world is not physical as we experience it. In other words, what seems solid isn't solid. And even when you get down, like de Broglie earned his Nobel Prize for showing that even particles aren't particles, they're wavelets of energy. And physics holds by that today. It seems very hard to believe that we are energy in the form of skin and bones, or the chairs and wood in the form is energy in the form of, but that's a reality. I mean, that's absolutely true. Is energy. No, but it is a stretch to think that light beams can take on the form of a person. Okay, but they did. So how information can condense itself and manifest itself as information? I can't answer you. I don't know. But I know that that's in my understanding of the literature that I read. No one says how it happens, because how could we understand? Energy, information isn't physical, but then the world may not be physical also. I mean, we already see that the world is not solid, that there's no that it appears solid, but it's not. And I don't mean just this to the 4 miles. I mean, even the particles themselves turn out to be not particles, but wavelets of energy. So I cannot tell you, and I'm sorry I can't. But we see that physics holds by it, even from this secular diagram right here, that the quantum fluctuation manifests itself in the physical world. I don't know. I'm sorry, I do not have an answer. But if anyone has an answer right to that, please say so. Otherwise, no. Okay, would you put your hand down? So, but I want to get to the age of the universe a little bit. Go ahead. Yeah. Did you have a question? What? Oh. Well, one thing on evolution. I think for certain life developed from the simple to the complex. Otherwise, the Torah is wrong, and science took a while to catch up to it. But the word developed is parv. It doesn't say God or not God. I would say that evolution is a highly biased statement. Evolution says random mutations make one lion stronger than the other, and then there's no question. The second stage is strong lions eat weak lions. That's why there aren't a lot of lions around. Not because people killed them off. Lions kill lions off. They eat them. They kill them. They're probably rather bellicose beings. So evolution is a 2-stage process. To be called evolution, the mutations have to be random. That's the definition of evolution. They have to be random. If they're skewed in any way, it's no longer evolution, it's development. Development means sometimes God may be controlling, sometimes God may not be controlling. But that's a different word than evolution. Evolution demands that it be totally godless, no divine action involved. In American English, not in British English, by the way, it's important to realize the difference. In British English, it's a different meaning. But in American...
Why can't evolution be development? Why couldn't it evolve? Byzantine, our diet might have changed, and our environment might have changed, and the lack of the use of the Byzantine might have been progress or development, but through evolutionary methodologies and evolutionary processes. Why are they two contradictory thoughts?
Well, have two different meanings. Evolution demands that the mutations be random. And the selection, everybody realizes the selection is not random. Obviously, strong lions beat up weak lions. And smart people sometimes, outsmart dumb people. Not always, but quite often. It's true. So that second half is absolutely not random. But for anyone who tells you that evolution is not a random process, they're just wrong. Evolution has to be random. The mutations have to be random. And if you think that the question is, do you think that the random mutations can change rocks and water into life? That's the only question. I don't think so, but there are people that think so.
More concrete, like the evolution or the fossils of what look like Cro-Magnon men or people, right, with different limbs and different manners of walking, and then you have, obviously humans today, as we know, that's ourselves. Does the Bible have any discussion or allude to what those types of beings were and man? Is there a conflict there, or is there a way that the Bible explains it as you know?
Relating to man, humankind?
Or the idea that we evolved from an ape-like.
Well, I would say develop. I think for certain, in my opinion, look, we all have the identical DNA. I mean, not the information, but the DNA, our genetic system. If you came from outer space, we would look like cousins to pine trees, as we are. I mean, we have the same exact genetic information, and it doesn't look like it ever evolved. There doesn't seem to be anything in the system of our genetic code, usually just called DNA, that shows any evolution. Every form of life has the same structure. It has different information encoded on it, but it's all digital. It's all like a computer is a binary, so we're quaternary. We have four clues, 4 keys, as opposed to computers on and off. and we have the 4 nucleotides, and every form of life has it. It doesn't matter whether it's the simplest microbe or you, or a gorilla or a sequoia tree. It's the exact same information. So it looks, to me, it would appear that there's no indication of the evolution of that genetic system of recording information, unlike the other system of recording information, which is language and writing, and that we can see is vastly changed. I mean, whether it's horizontally from the hieroglyphics to the languages, or vertically or horizontally. Greek, if you don't know Greek, it's Greek to you, it's Greek to me, that's for sure. Or Chinese or Hebrew, or why? So we see in the biological, the intellectual recording of information is huge evolution, but in the DNA doesn't seem to be any. It stays the same. The same 4 nucleotides seem to do the job just right, whether you're a pine tree, a bacterium, or a person. So we have, again, the details of how a fish evolves into a frog is considerably less interesting or mind-boggling as to how light beams became fishes and frogs in DNA. That's what I would say. I would say that I think for absolutely certain we have a primate in our family, and I teach at Torah, which is considered to be in the old city, a black hat, it's an outreach yeshiva. But I teach there for 2 decades now, and I teach regularly, although I was once threatened by a person very high up in the rabbinate. I was warned by the hierarchy of Torah, expect a phone call. I get this phone call in the evening, and this guy, I don't remember his name yet, but I was told when someone told me where he's like this, he said, "What you teach is true, that Adam probably had parents, but don't teach it, we'll put you in Pharaoh." That's pretty interesting. What? Say it again?
Did you listen to him?
No, I still teach it. I teach it because I had discussions with the former Rosh Yeshiva Ner Yisrael, Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg of blessed memory. He said, point blank, the Torah surely hints that Adam had parents. You just read the text. I don't know if we have time to get into it. We can get into it tonight if you want to, but that takes a little bit more time. I have no idea how the timing is supposed to work here. I wanted to do a bit of the engineering. So for certain we developed from the simple to the complex. That we may have a primate, and what's the problem? What makes you human isn't verse 26, where God makes Adam. It's verse 27, where God creates the Adam. It's the neshama that makes people human. When a museum says, when the local museum shows diagram or these exhibits of people 70,000 years ago looking just like us, and 50,000 years ago looking just like us and inventing pretty fancy tools, and 10,000 years ago inventing farming, and maybe 9,000 or 8,000 inventing pottery, they're completely correct by their definition of people. The museum's definition of people, they are 100% correct. By the museum's definition of a person, people, humans, go back 70,000 years. By their definition of a human, as the Rosh Yeshiva Rabbi Noach Weinberg said, they can have a discussion. First thing you got to do is define your terms. It's a brilliant understanding. So how does a museum, what do they call it, anthropology? Is that what it's called? Define a human. A person, a being that looks like you, has a high forehead, has good frontal lobes, lots of intelligence, so clever they can invent farming, which probably none of us could do in this room right now ourselves. We'd be dead in their environment in 2 weeks. No, we would. Everyone else would be dead. They were having families, giving children. I mean, after 5 births, I couldn't take it. I said, Barbara, it's enough. I can't stand it anymore. Like screaming, the pain. Right. So they did it for 70,000 years by the definition of a human being a Homo sapiens sapien. But the Bible's definition of a human is slightly different. It's a Homo sapiens sapien, and there's a being that looks just like us, plus the neshama. That's the difference. And that only goes back less than 6,000 years. And that's documented pretty well in the flow of society. I have 2 chapters on this in the Science of God. The British Museum documents the timing when society changed. They don't mention, in writing they document it, in the walls, on the big plaque they have. I got it in the, doesn't matter, in the Science of God. That society changed exactly at the time that the Torah says the neshama came into the world. Now I can guarantee you, they don't mention neshama, they don't mention God, they don't mention the Bible. They just talk about society. So the biblical definition of a human is the Homo sapiens sapien, looks like this, etc., and has the Spirit of God. The neshama is the human soul. The museum's definition, by their definition, is absolutely correct. By the museum's definition, people go back 70,000 years. But by the Bible's definition, they weren't people. They were animals that looked human, had human brains. They would be beings, had human brains, human intelligence, invented farming, pottery, lamps with wicks, weaving.
Why did God wait so long to imbue them with the soul?
Well, it's like I said, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and then he had this quantum fluctuation. The fluctuation gave rise to matter.
You're saying that there was beings, and then God said, you know what?
Because the beings had to develop to a point in which they could absorb this understanding. They were burying their dead really for 50,000 years before Adam came along. So they're searching for something. So God would be waiting for them to get this. Remember, this is not just me speaking. It's the Torah giving us this information that things are taking time to get.
But then you're saying that there had to be an evolution to a certain point.
No, not evolution, development.
You're saying it needed to take a certain amount of time until there was something, a body that was
Yes,
to receive the soul?
yes, yeah. Well, that's what happened. I mean, whether you like it or not, or there's no God active in the world and it's all random, which are pretty unlikely because light beings became alive, or that there's the fact that it takes time isn't the problem. The fact is that it happened. Why would God wait that amount of time? Clearly, it was taking time to make this come about. If you're using the laws of nature, and consistently through the Torah, God works through the laws of nature. The only name for God in Genesis chapter 1 is Elohim. God is manifest in nature. It's a clear statement. God uses the wind to split the sea. God brings the locust and the plague by wind. God needs the wind to bring the locust. Why don't God just flop the locust down? Because every time that God can work through Elohim, God uses Elohim. The laws of nature. We see it's the biblical nature of God in the world. And if you want to get people out of a big bang, it takes a lot of time. If you want to use the laws of nature. And does God have to use the laws of nature? I don't know if God has to or doesn't have to. But it's surely clear in the text that God uses the laws of nature consistently. That's the biblical God. We may figure that, why did God mess it up like that? I don't know why God did it that way. But the text makes it clear. God uses the laws of... If you invent them, you might as well use them. Put it that way. Why would God use a quantum fluctuation to make the universe? Could God have used a quantum fluctuation? We don't know. But a quantum fluctuation can create the universe from nothing. So there's a... God would use the laws of nature so the world would look natural so it had free will. It's exactly the example of the splitting of the sea. It looks so natural the Egyptians followed them right on in. It's just a wind. But according to Rashi, this free will extends totally through all of existence. That's the clue about the information. I don't know if I mentioned it in here, but in chapter 1, verse 11, I don't think I mentioned it here. Maybe I did. In chapter 1, verse 11, in chapter 1, verse 11, God tells the earth, the rocks and water, commands the earth to bring forth life. And one form of the life is Eitz Pri Yoseh Pri. Did I mention? Did I have it in the notes today or not? No? Eitz Pri Yoseh Pri. Fruit trees that make fruit. God tells the earth, bring forth these types of plants, and then one of them is Eitz Pri Yoseh Pri. Eitz means tree, Pri means fruit. Eitz Pri Yoseh Pri. A fruit tree that makes fruit. Okay? That's verse number 11. Verse 12 is the execution. Verse 11 is the command to the earth, rocks and water. God says to the earth, bring forth this, and fruit trees that make fruit. Verse 12 is the execution, and God brings forth, and the earth brings forth Eitz Yoseh Pri, trees that make fruit. And Rashi says the world rebelled, the earth rebelled, the earth sinned. It's Rashi. That the earth, see, going back to information, it extends down to the free will. Will extends to the lowest level that you can imagine. Now, if it was just Rashi, but physics says the same thing. A physicist would say, what else is new? We've been talking about that for the last 80 years. But Rashi's been talking about it for the last 800 years. Rashi says the following. What is happening in chapter 3, verse 17? Adam and Eve had eaten the forbidden fruit. God chastises them one by one. Finally, God comes to Adam to chastise Adam. And God says to Adam, because you ate of the fruit of the tree I told you not to eat, cursed is the ground. Get a non sequitur here? Because, Adam, you ate of the fruit of the tree I told you not to eat, cursed is the ground. What's the non sequitur? What doesn't follow? What? Exactly. The ground says to God, well, you're for me already. You planted the tree. You made it beautiful. The first thing you tell them, you make it beautiful. You stick it in the garden. And then you say, what do you think you're going to do? The first thing people need, you say, don't eat it. You say, what are you doing, God? You're blaming me? It's your fault. And we can hear the ground saying that. That is not what the ground says in the Midrash. But, I mean, you can just hear the ground. But that's the text. Adam eats the fruit. Adam isn't cursed. The ground is cursed. Rashi, back on verse number 11 of chapter 1, says the following. The reason the ground is cursed in chapter 3, verse 17, it's amazing, Rashi, is because the ground sinned. It went against God's words. The ground can sin. The ground has a will. That's the information. It's everywhere. There's a level of mind everywhere. It's exactly what Heisenberg said. The late Nobel laureate George Wald, who starts off as an avid agnostic, you don't need God, time can do it, ends up saying that the entire world, I have the quotes, they're phenomenal quotes, so I'm going to bore you with them, that the entire world is the expression of mind. He says in his writing, it was a shock, his words were, it was a shock to my scientific sensibilities that I suddenly realized that the entire world is the expression of a mind. The entire world. This is a man who 30 years earlier said that you don't need God, just give me some time and I'll create the world from absolute nothing. I mean, I'll create life from rocks and water just by random reactions. And then and it's always at the quantum level. That's what that Heisenberg quote is, at the bottom of the cup is God. Then he earned his Nobel Prize for discovering the quantum physics that relies behind the retina, being able to change its picture 20 times a second. I look at you, and as fast as I turn my head, you shouldn't be insulted, but I don't see you any longer, I see you. And I look over here and I see you. We just take it for granted that we can change. The reactions are taking place in picoseconds, and you're moving material. These are electrons and protons, atoms that are moving in picoseconds across microseconds. And Wald didn't take it for granted. He realized there's something going on here, and he changed his understanding. At the bottom of the cup in the details is God. And he said the entire world, he didn't say God, is the expression of mind. Otherwise, how do you explain it? And how do you explain the earth rebelling? Mind is present everywhere, and it is free will, and that's the tzimtzum that God pulls back. In bar mitzvah teaching and in bat mitzvah teaching, oh, God is there, everything happens by, etc., etc. I can guarantee you, Chazal knew Chulin better than we'll ever know, where it says nothing happens but God runs the show. And when they say point blank that God pulled back and allows the world to run itself and then steps in, doesn't disappear from the picture, it's Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. Anyone who davens in the morning in the Ashkenazi service, the Sephardi is also, but it's deferred a bit. You say the Baruch Hu, and what's the next sentence you say after that? Okay? Baruch Atah Hashem, what? Yotzer? Yeah, it's Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. It's sentence number 2 in Kabbalah. Sentence number 1 is a oneness in the God, right? There's one God, everything, not just is one God, it is a unity. And sentence number 2, and that's why we have it, it is the opening sentence in the formal part of the prayer. Why did Chazal stick that in? Because that's how God runs the world. Yotzer or Rei Choshech. God forms light and creates, how do you say it? I form light and I create darkness, I make peace and I create evil. It's not the right text is evil, it's changed in the prayers. I form light and I create darkness. Well, if you are one of the sources of light, the positive thing, how do you get darkness in the world? What do you have to do with some of the light? It's not a trick question. What do you have to do with it? What? It's Tzimtzum, you have to pull it back. That's the origin of Tzimtzum. That sentence is the origin of Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means to contract. I form light and I create darkness. It's the biblical definition of creation from God's point of view. It is pivotal in how God runs the world. That's why it's the first sentence that we say after the Baruch Hu. You want to daven in the morning? Get it straight right from the beginning. It's a big clock on the head, but that's the reality. I form light and I create darkness. Well, light, if you want darkness, what do you have to do with the light? You have to hide it. You have to do some sam. It means it's Hebrew to contract. I make peace and I create evil. One of God's names is peace, shalom, shleimut. If you want harmony, evil in the world, and you're the source of peace, what do you have to do with the peace? You have to pull it back, hide it. It's not that God disappears, just hides God's face, right? Hestapanian. It's the Hebrew word letzamtzem, that God pulls back and allows the world to happen and then steps in and slaps it around a bit and keeps it on. In other words, there are things that happen in the world that God would not like to happen, and they happen. And Maimonides says it in the Mori Nevuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed, part 3, chapter 51, and the other end of the scale from Maimonides, the rationalist, Nachmanides, the Mikubal, the Kabbalist, says it on Genesis chapter 18, 19. It's mind-boggling. That statement, I'm so beholden to a person whose name I don't remember, after talking to Tiberius, he said, you ever read Nachmanides on 18, 19 of Genesis? It's amazing. God guards the group, but the individual has to watch his back. And the more you let God into your life, the more God is in your life. Only the righteous people don't have accidents. But you've never met a righteous person in your life, I presume. I'm sure I haven't. They're totally righteous. Everyone else has a slack. And the bigger the slack, the bigger the slack. I form light and I create dark. It is the definition of creation from God's point of view. Our creation is something from nothing. It's more like nothing from something from God's point of view. The oneness then shatters. You get diversity, and God pulls back. Yes?
I just want to go back to one of the other things that you spoke about in terms of the fact that humans have been around for 70,000 years, etc.
Well, humans by the definition of a museum.
Correct. And then you said something, we're talking about mind-boggling, the fact that the British Museum has something 6,000 years ago.
Yeah, 5,500.
5,500 years ago. What is that thing? What's the definition from a secular perspective? What's the definition of British Museum?
I'll read it to you directly, because I quote it. I say, and again, in the fullest meaning of the word, thank God, after we were off, when Science of God was just the first edition was not quite going into print, and Barbara and I were in England, we took some time off, and then recently I went there again with Barbara. My wife is Barbara Sofer. I urge you, barbarasofer.com, 1 R. She's a phenomenal writer. She writes the Jerusalem Post and is also spokesman for Hadassah International. Here's the plaque on the wall of the British Museum, the earliest cities. It hasn't changed one word in 10 years, okay? The museum used to have just one window about 10 or 15 years ago, had one room, the Mesopotamian room. Now it has an entire wing, at least as of 3 or 4 years ago. And here is the plaque on the wall. I photographed, but I have it word for word in the text. And here I am, not the plaque, just to prove it. Here's what it says, okay? Here's what it says, if I can find it here. The earliest cities, the British Museum in London, okay? And it is the change that occurs in society, if that's what you were asking about, okay? The earliest cities, large towns evolved before 5,500 years ago. Actually, they have a BC, so I'm just changing it to 5,500 years. Before 5,500 years ago, as local centers. But about this time, there's a sudden change in scale. You know what was 5,500 years ago? Just after Adam, right after Adam. So I called up, the white phone on the wall, to the curator, and thank God he wasn't out to lunch. He answers the phone. I say, what are you telling me? That the large cities only appeared 5,500 years ago. The Tower of Jericho goes back 10,000 years. And he said, you're right. But don't confuse the Jericho of 10,000 years ago with the Jericho that Joshua fights. It's the same oasis and the same location. But by the time you get to Joshua, thousands of years later, it's a city 3 or 4 kilometers on a side. It's a huge city. The Tower of Jericho is a marker for a chamula, the Arabic and Hebrew word for the extended family, mom, dad, the kids, and grandma and grandpa. Their location. It wasn't a city. It was just a small center. Large cities, so he pointed out that large cities large cities appear just about the time that, in fact, the Torah says the neshama comes into the world. Notice the problem here? And then it keeps going, lists the cities one after the other. It says, much the most important innovation of the period, however, was the invention of writing. That's interesting. Now, the invention of writing wasn't hallelujahs of God. Make that very clear. The invention of writing was Sam owes Frank and Moshe owes Jacob. It was economic transactions. It says the need to record the invention of writing was the need to record economic reaction. That's the plaque. So what's going on here? What's going on here is a sudden change in social skills. Large cities. Why writing and large cities at the same time? Because you can see what happens. Once you have large cities, is division of labor. Sam and his family live in the city. Frank and his family live on the farm. All winter long, Sam in the city weaves big storage baskets. All winter long, Frank on the farm is growing corn. Comes the spring, Sam picks up these really big 50, they're really heavy, 50 big storage baskets, carries them to Frank on the farm, talks to them and says, Frank on the farm, you need my baskets because your corn's going to get moldy and my baskets breathe, And so you need to store till the next season. And Frank on the farm said, God, you're a godsend. I need those baskets. So Sam from the city says, you know what, Frank from the farm, I'll trade you 48 baskets. You give me 2 baskets full of corn. I can feed my kids back in the city. Frank on the farm says that is a good deal. You get 2 bags of corn for my in exchange for the 48 baskets. But then Frank on the farm breaks the bad news to Sam from the city. Sam from the city, it came out 2 weeks too early. The corn won't be ripe for 2 weeks. Don't break your back carrying the baskets back into town. Leave them here. Come back in 2 weeks and get your corn. And what does Sam from the city say? Yeah, Frank, but let's write it out. Frank on the farm owes Sam from the city. Writing is invented because bartering is invented. Bartering is invented because of division of labor. Frank's on the farm, Sam's in the city. Division of labor occurs for one reason only: the sudden existence of large cities. Because before large cities, every family did everything within the group. The only thing that the British Museum doesn't say is, gosh, why do large cities just happen to appear 5,500 years ago, just after the Torah says the neshama came into the world? That's the other half of history. See?
When did marriage?
1 second. You see the problem? Large cities appear because the neshama comes into the world. Now, the British Museum doesn't say that. It just gives the dating. The Torah says why. I mean, why? It's exactly what you say. Why did it take so long for large cities to develop? Why didn't they have them earlier? Because they couldn't develop earlier, because before the neshama was a dog-eat-dog world. If you didn't look like me, smell like me, talk like me, I had you for dinner. Literally. It was a dog-eat-dog world. Stand on my face. This is my terror. It's like drug dealers today. You know, I had to kill Frank. You should hear Alan Dershowitz. We had dinner with him a few years ago. He and his wife Carol and Barbara and I had dinner with him. And Dershowitz said the following: even when I lost the case and they're going off to jail for life for murdering Frank, the guy says to me, "I'm not guilty. I had to kill Frank. I had to kill him. He was moving into my territory. You know, it's my territory." We got the same thing today in drug wars. So it's not so surprising that there are no animals that look like a marriage. I don't know where marriage came. I mean, yes. To be politically correct, I had this problem once, unfortunately, on NPR. So I would say, politically correct, everyone that looks like you and me has a neshama. That's right. The neshama can spread several ways, according to Rashi. Biologically, mom and dad got it, then the kids have it. And also socially, Rashi says that if you raise a child, then that you can inculcate the neshama. Rashi makes it clear you have their social parents. However, I have no idea about the Stone Age tools.
If I may.
Yeah, we're really late.
No, we're really late, but this is so fascinating. So as follows. I hold the Center for Return. This is, I think, the 18th Yeshiva-Lite. We always end at 8:10, which we didn't do tonight because Dr. Schroeder is very special. So what we're going to do is follows. Those who have to go can feel free to go. However, we'd like to have a question and answer period, so though if Dr. Schroeder would allow, I mean, people are asking questions, but so therefore feel if you need to go, then go. Of course, we'll be looking at you as you leave, and we'll be, why are you going? How insulting is that? You have something more important to do? Okay, but let us continue a little while, but ask your questions. So that was an excellent, question, excellent answer.
I'm going to walk out just to make it. I'll be back, though.
Please, Josh.
About the
We're going to later because I want to.
Yeah, we'll limit to 10 minutes. We'll end at 8:30, okay?
We'll end at 8:30, and please, any questions, please.
Well, I have cards here if anyone. But if you go to my website, as far as the age of the universe goes, there's about a 4-page essay there that leads you by the hand. It's in 2 chapters in this book, but there it's condensed into about 4 pages of how the universe is young and old simultaneously. Days mean days, but there are 2 perspectives of time. I don't want to get in because that would take the rest of the time. But if you go to geraldschroeder.com or take a card and you go to my website, there's an essay there that talks, and it just leads you by the hand through what I could do now for 20 minutes, but we don't have 20 minutes. But the universe is young and old simultaneously.
There's a common concept that only humans have free will. That not like that. What distinguishes man from nefesh, from behemoth, versus nefesh soul, is that we have free will, whereas animals don't. So how does that
I guess it's wrong. I gotta tell you, I think Rashi's smarter than anyone I've ever met, and he said point blank, the earth rebelled. Got a problem? So the Midrash is wrong. I mean, I think Rashi's correct.
Then what distinguishes man? What distinguishes
Neshama, spirituality. When we say midaber, it's an unfortunate state. I'm sure you've heard humans are midaber, speech. It comes from the Onkelos. It's not midaber. It's ruach mamalala. It's spiritual speech. It's the same mistake when people say, well, how can the universe be 14 billion years old? There's another half of the sentence. 14 billion years old is measured from our time-space coordinates in the universe. The other half of the sentence of the 14 billion years old is never said. From our measurement of space and age, from our perspective today. Okay, the billions of years went by, and we measure them from our perspective. Go to anywhere else in the universe and make those measurements, you get a different number. Not a big difference, but you will get a different number. The same thing is with midaber. It's unfortunate because it turns a lot of people off. Because our difference, the origin of the statement that we are midaber, most people don't even realize the origin when they say it. The origin is the Onkelos in chapter 2, verse 7, where he defines a human as ruach mamalala. Not chaya mamalala, ruach mamalala. Ruach mamalala means a speaking spirit. Chaya mamalala means a speaking animal. And in every place where nefesh chaya, it goes in the word nefesh chaya. Every place where he translates, I won't go into the Aramaic, I'll just give the English. He says a living animal is a living animal, but when it comes to humans, for nefesh chaya, he says ruach, a speaking spirit. The difference between humans and animals is spiritual speech. Not speech, spiritual speech. But there's... Well, there's no animal close to us any longer because we killed them all off, okay? And then we ate them probably.
We have animals today.
But we have no animals that are close to us today. I mean, really close. They just don't. Chimps aren't. They're similar to us, but they're not close to us, okay?
What is spiritual speech?
That it understands the oneness in the world that relates us to the divine oneness. No, I don't think prayer. I think just helping, just be caring and acting in a way that realizes that all other human beings are other human beings. They're all in the image of God. That's what the neshama. Nefesh doesn't know that. The neshama knows it. I think that's acting that way. So you can say, I don't think that's prayer. I don't think keeping kosher. I think it means just that you act towards other persons in a way that you realize you have to re'echa kamocha. Yeah, that's really. But a person who haven't had their hands. One second. But yeah.
What about those people who say that the universe began, get the first little get on it, so it's 70,000 years ago, so 6,000 years ago? That's literally, don't believe it.
Well, okay, that's what I have on my website because that'll take the rest of the time. The biblical calendar that says the year is 5772, right? If you add up but where does it start? I'm asking you. And what happened 57? I want you to answer. But what do you think they're saying? When? But that's not the biblical calendar. The biblical calendar starts with Adam's creation, verse 27, the creation of the neshama. The days before that, those 6. Yeah. Now the 6 days were all 24 hours. That's a given. The Talmud says it. The Kabbalah says it. Rashi says it. But they see time from the beginning. It will take. We only have about 4 minutes left. And I urge you. You want to answer? It'll take you 20 minutes of reading. GeraldSchroeder.com. There's a list of articles. Go to the one, Age of the Universe, and it summarizes what's 2 chapters in. I don't recall the eye of the needle. Maybe if I'm quoted in there. Well, if it talks about relativity, it's a mistranslation. No, Nachmanides didn't. I didn't figure it out at all. Nachmanides did. He points out that there are time is described differently. Genesis starts off evening and morning, evening and morning. It's a bad translation. Then from the creation of Adam and Eve live a certain amount of time, kids. There are two descriptions of time. What? Yom Echad, Bimkom Yom Sheni. Day one instead of Yom Rishon. Instead of a first day. The Torah sees time from the beginning looking forward. And it actually works. The numbers actually work. The perception of time. It's not a trick. The calculation that I discussed, I always apologize for saying this because it sounds very much patting myself on the back. The calculation that's described in that article or in the 2 chapters in The Science of God put this book on the bestseller list for an entire year. You do not last on Amazon's bestseller list for an entire, and be the best-selling book for the entire year in its category, which is a science category, if it's a trick. The fact is the universe is billions of years old. The 6 days are 24 hours each, but they see time from the beginning looking forward, and anyone who knows astronomy understands how that happens, and the journal Nature, one of the 2 leading science journals in the world, peer-reviewed, has given the stamp of approval that this is a valid way of discussing the age of the universe. They have a different agenda, but this is a valid way that the Torah sees time from the beginning, and therefore it says Yom Echad, day one, instead of a first day. There's some subtleties in there, but we are now have 1 minute left. Who has a 1 minute answer? Wait, but he hasn't asked. You asked. Yeah. How many? No, the perception. The Hebrew word, the key word, I should have made that clear. The key word's perception. How does the Bible perceive time and events from the beginning looking forward? The billions of years went by. I have no question about that. We live in the earth. We make these measurements. The billions of years went by. That's our physical understanding. How would time be perceived from the beginning looking forward? It's not relativity. It's not gravity. It's not velocity. It's the stretching of space. Okay? It's how time would be perceived. And the perception of time, as every astronomer knows, when you perceive an event from a location different from where the event takes place, that event information has to travel through space till you get to it, right? And it is therefore stretched out. This is the opposite of what would be happening in the Bible, but I'm just using that example. If you want to know how it would be from the event where it happened, you have to go back in time, mathematically, to that time. And when you go back mathematically in time, time becomes compressed. It would sound bizarre, except the journal Nature uses the exact same approach to calculate the age of the universe, which is different from my approach, but they have a different agenda. Okay? So the argument that it's not valid is not on the table any longer, because we can get by the journal Nature, which is very, very rigorous, anti-metaphysical editorial board. The fact is it's a valid way. What's just amazing is that the numbers do work, with no bending of the numbers. 6 24-hour days, from this perspective, if you took the expansion of the universe, I can't spend more time on that. It's in the text, and it just means that when you go back in time and we go from here back to here, to the beginning, the compression is 900 billion. It's not my number. I'm not an astronomer. But 900 billion, that compression, it's a ratio, does in fact compress the 14 billion years into 5.5 days, which is exactly the answer the Torah asks for, because Adam begets the neshama 5.5 days after the creation. I did one thing. There are approximately 30,000 references to this on the web. If that calculation put the book on the bestsellers for an entire year. It's not my trick. No one shoots it down. There's no argument against it. There's one argument against it. I cheated and I picked the numbers that worked. I didn't. Nachmanides says the calendar says this, and the numbers just flow from science. I didn't change one thing. I did one calculation, and when the calculation came out, I ran to my Barbara. I said, Barbara, this is something. The Bible might be true. One last question.
I have such a quick question. It has to do with the fact that we're using Yom for all the 6 days, which is perfect with that theory, present time. But then the Bible seems to also use Yom for Yom HaShvi'i, which is the 7th day, which is after the
That's fine. It's a 24-hour day.
What if we use a different,
No.
total different?
No, because at the creation of the soul of Adam, the Torah abandons this point of view and takes an earth point of view. That's why from Adam forward,
That should be reflected linguistically.
it is. From Adam forward, every day, every act is a human act. Adam and Eve live 130 years, have a kid named Seth. We're living in outer space, they're living on there. From Adam forward, every passage of time is human-based.
But why don't they use a different word then?
Why? It's Yom, because they are day. No, the days are 24 hours each.
No, but compressed, they're billions.
No, they're 24 hours. No, from the Bible's point of view, they're 24 hours each.
No, but you said from when he gets his neshama, it's both compressed and not compressed.
No. When the moment When the moment, no, I didn't say that. I'll tell you, because I'm in the room, I can tell you what I said. The fact is, from when Adam gets the neshama, verse 27, halfway through the sixth day, and the Talmud says Adam was created, not made halfway through the sixth day. The wording is very significant. Adam was, and they know, you can tell why. It's verse 27. Verse 27 happens to be halfway through the sixth day, the verse of the verses. So Adam is created 5.5 days after the creation of the universe. And from that time on, every passage of time is human-based time from the earth. For the first 5.5 days, it is totally like, I'll call it cosmic time. It has a different perspective. It sees time from the beginning looking forward. But the word day never changes its meaning. 24 hours. But 24 hours from here compresses a lot of time versus 24 hours from here.
I have to,
really-
Rachel, you are trying to get away without buying Dr. Schroeder's book, Science of God. It's a good attempt, but it won't work. There he explains it perfectly. Thank you all very much, and a very big hand for Dr. Schroeder.